We're going to talk about Syria now because funerals are being held for the victims of a drone attack on a military academy in Homs. The Syrian army has blamed what it called terrorist groups for the attack that killed at least 100 people and left dozens injured. We are hearing 50 civilians are among the dead. Our Middle East correspondent Lina Sinjab is following the story from Beirut.
I think the city and the people and the families are all still in shock, mourning the death. We've seen funeral parades yesterday and continued today. The whole country is really in shock about this drone attack. As you mentioned, the government is blaming, what it's called as terrorist groups, but it's really hard to understand as to who is behind this attack. The government immediately launched, attacks on rebel-held areas in northwest and Syria, which is a sign of retaliation. But so far, little is known about who and why this attack took place.
It's thought this was a drone attack, though, Lina. Do we know which of the groups that operate in that part of Syria has the capacity to deploy a drone in this kind of way?
Well, to start with, no one has claimed responsible for the attack at the moment. And in the past, following all the situation in Syria, although the Syrian sky is very busy, you have the Turks, you have the Kurdish, you have the Americans operating, you have the Iranians, the Russians, everyone is like violating the skies, even the Israelis. But in the past, the HTS, which is the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, that was linked to Al-Qaeda at some point, used some drones to attack in Latakia, nearby from Idlib, which is a short distance. But it's hard to believe that they have, drones with capacities to launch such, explosive attacks from over 100-kilometer distance. So far, it's really raising lots of questions, especially that the Minister of Defense, who was there to attend the ceremony and celebrate with the graduates, left the scene just before the attack and even without attending the ceremony. So there is a high alert that he may have been warned against it, but did nothing about the rest. But of course, we can't confirm the reason why he left at the moment.
Diana Dark is author of My House in Damascus and The Last Sanctuary in Aleppo and joins us now. Diana, a devastating day for people in Homs, 3 days of national mourning. We think that maybe 50 civilians, because families were there at this military academy, women and children as well, were killed in the attack. What were your thoughts when you first heard of the attack and who might be responsible?
Well, obviously the choice of Homs is very significant because that's where the Syrian revolution first sort of broke out in earnest. And of course, the Assad regime punished it big time by completely flattening the center of Homs. And, Marie Colvin died there. I mean, it's a very, very significant place. It's the capital of the revolution. So the choice of Homs is very significant. The other thing that struck me was it's a change. It's a new thing, this use of drones against Assad regime targets. And the echo it immediately had for me was Ukraine, strangely, because, of course, we've been hearing about the Russian attacks in Ukraine on civilian targets like funerals, markets, schools, hospitals. It's exactly what the Assad regime was doing in Syria with Russian help. And of course, the Ukrainian response to that was to start sending drones into the center of Moscow. So the sort of David and Goliath kind of response, in a way, that's certainly new here. That this kind of drone attack on Assad regime forces is as far as I'm aware, unprecedented. So it could be the beginning of something else in what is a absolutely devastating war, been going on for 12 years, and it is not over, even though some people may think it is.
So, Diana, do you think there would be only certain groups operating in that area who would have the capability to be able to deploy drones in this way?
Well, up to now, people didn't think that anybody did have this kind of capacity, that the major group, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the HTS, Al-Qaeda affiliated people in Idlib, they haven't had this kind of, they could do it without help from outside. But the groups, they're not that coordinated these days. They're pretty, uncoordinated, and so it's hard to see where on earth it could come from, because it's 120 kilometers away from government, outside government lines, and so it's a long way to send a drone. The other thing that's weird, actually, is that the Syrian regime is giving no evidence of the drone attack. There's no footage of any of the debris or anything like that, the wreckage, which is unusual. It's weird, and of course that's speculating lots of theories that is this a false flag thing. I mean, we just don't know. It's too early to know. Nobody's claimed responsibility. And
Diana, can I just ask you? You've already raised Ukraine, and Syria, of course, has fallen off the radar for many people and off people's agenda in a sense. But 12 years of immense suffering now for the people of Syria. What is life like there at the moment?
It is absolutely dire. I mean, 90% of the population is below the poverty line. Life there is so much harder than it was during the war. And in recent months, there's been all this press stuff about Assad's rehabilitation, welcoming back into the Arab League, which led people to think, well, maybe we're going to get some Gulf money to help with reconstruction. None of that has happened because Assad has not lived up to his side of the bargain. He hasn't made any of the concessions that the Gulf countries were asking for. So he hasn't clamped down on the Captagon trade, the big narcotics trade that he and his brother are running, for their own enrichment. So it's an incredibly dire situation. There's shortages of everything. About 2 hours of electricity a day, hardly any gas, shortages of petrol, shortages of heating fuel. I mean, just surviving is very hard work in Syria these days.
Yeah, a very grim picture that you're painting there, Diana, but it is worth reminding people of what is still happening in Syria as we look at the aftermath, pictures of the aftermath of this attack in Homs.
Yeah.
Thank you.